Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. Chad Himes here, joined by my friend Bob Stewart. Bob, how are you today?
Chad, I'm fantastic, buddy. How are you?
I am great, Bob. Things are going very well, as always in my world. Now, Bob, I want to take you back to last season.
Okay.
As we get this one started. And you might remember we had a huge hit with our emotional intelligence series. If you remember that from last year. And we weren't even planning. We just got onto conversation about that, and we turned it into like 7 episodes. Anybody who wants to check it out, it's season 1, episode 11 through 16. You remember that conversation, Bob?
Only because I'm constantly on the look for ways to improve my emotional intelligence. Like, I feel like some days, Chad, it's really low. And like literally the next day, it's much higher. But there's weeks, where you just not, I don't know. Yeah, this is such a fascinating topic to me. I have young kids, and so trying to figure out how to make those boys more emotionally intelligent. It's I absolutely remember, and I'm excited to have our guest here today to talk about it.
And that's the thing, Bob. We decided that we talked about it last season, and we got a lot of positive feedback on it. Yet we wanted to bring in someone who really can talk about it with us. So I want to introduce our guest to our audience today, and welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast, Dr. Phyllis Quinlan. Welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, gentlemen.
We are so excited to have you here. Now, Dr. Quinlan, and we'll call you Phyllis when we get going on all this and make this a lot more casual, yet it's so formal at the beginning because we want everyone to know who you are. And I always find it's better to let you introduce yourself because you really share the things that really matter about who you are, not some stuff we just read off some great bio. So would you introduce yourself to our audience?
Thank you. I've been a nurse for 42 years, and I've practiced in a variety of settings. I've been a clinician. I've also worked in professional development or education, and of course, administration. I've also been a professional coach for the better part of 20 years, and I'm certified by the International Coaching Federation. I really offer a lot through my entrepreneurial ventures to really help build resilience through developing emotional intelligence in professional and family caregivers and just about anyone who identifies that need within themselves.
Wow. 41 years at something, you get pretty good at it after that much time.
I would think, yes. I take a lot of pride in my accomplishments. I drank all the Kool-Aid as far as academic preparation and certification was concerned, got my certifications, went for my doctorate, really leaned in.
Wow. All right. So,
Chad, we're on a run here of talking to people incredibly more qualified than we are.
At anything.
Incredibly more educated than we are. Thanks, Phyllis. Jeez Louise. Okay,
yeah.
Here we go.
We don't necessarily air these folks that are listening in the order that Bob and I sometimes get these interviews recorded. And he's referring to another interview we did earlier today with a professor of 40 years as well. So we're finding some experts out there. Phyllis, let's just jump into it. I mentioned we did a series on emotional intelligence last season for anybody who wants to check it out. But I want to ask you, as someone who knows about it, what's your definition of emotional intelligence, and how does emotional intelligence show up in people?
Yeah. So I guess the best definition of emotional intelligence is really to be able to know yourself so well that you really can be mindful of the things that trigger you to act and say things in a manner that you're going to regret 15 minutes from now.
Doesn't even take me 15 minutes usually.
So, there are, to me, emotional intelligence is the secret sauce to success in life, and as a professional, I've always been told that the secret is really academic preparation and honing your skills, whatever those are. Mine would be clinical skills, education skills, and so on. But we know now that that would have worked maybe years ago, but now we know that it is going to be academic preparation, really honing your skills, and then really understanding yourself so that you can represent yourself in a manner with which will be authentic, genuine, consistent with what the brand you want to portray, but even more important, open yourself up authentically so that you can interact with people in a manner that is respectful, open-minded, and that you can have some kind of a building relationships with people going forth, even if you disagree with them, even if there's an irritating piece to them, that you're not going to be triggered by these things, that you're actually going to be able to find some common ground, some empathy that allows you to relate on some level.
It's fun. Those first two things that you mentioned about how we develop our skills and the educate, like those have no human components to them, right? The emotional intelligence is that whole other piece where it's like, hey, I don't just develop these skills and use them in a vacuum. I actually use them with other people. So, I mean, essentially the emotional intelligence is like, how are you communicating and interacting with and empathizing with other people, right?
And you're 1,000% right, Bob. And the pieces in the healthcare industry that I come from, obviously, we were, since DRGs hit in the mid 1980s, we haven't put our foot on a firm ground about, what's our model of care going to be and how are we going to pay for it. So the amount of stress that's put on clinicians to change this, do that. We're going to do, prospective payment. No, wait a minute. We're going to do bundle payments. No, we're going to do this. And everybody has to change on a dime. And then we started mergers and acquisitions and downsizing and right-sizing and doing more with less. And what the administrative people, I don't think, fully understood in healthcare was you were asking the skill set, you were asking of clinicians to have the skill set of, finance folks and business people. And then all of a sudden they turned around and said, well, where's the caring and the empathy and the compassion? Well, hell, you didn't ask for that. You asked for us to be streamlined, efficient, focused on quality, make sure we do quality because we're being paid for quality. And all the empathy and the humanity went out the door. And then in the last 15 years or so, we're starting to realize, Lord, there's a person in the bed, and we have to relate to that person. And, it just keeps coming at you as a clinician, electronic medical record, the Wi-Fi doesn't work, you can't access. I mean, it's just one thing after the next. And then, they keep saying, we're going to give you the technology that you need so you can spend more time with the patient. That was kind of like a bait and switch because the technology is not necessarily working all the time and it's not easy to navigate. And you're still trying to be the clinician. We're down to physicians actually having maybe 12 to 15, 16 minutes to spend with a patient. Now, how do you develop a relationship with your patient, let alone build trust? And from the clinician standpoint, how does that feed their soul? I mean, we all came into professional caregiving to be of service to mankind, to be of human service. And you can't do that in 15-minute bites. So there's a piece here where we have to kind of take a breath, capture ourselves, and really ask the question. Many of our professional clinicians are struggling with burnout. And why is that? Is it too much work? Is it too little technology? Are we asking too much? Are we not training them correctly? And really, sometimes we just have to realize that we were people that went into this type of profession to be with people. And we need to be given a healthy work environment to be able to do just that. And then we have to have our skills refreshed on how to make an authentic connection with a human being, because for so many years now, that has not been the focus.
Wow. I think we could just take that moment of what you talked about, and we could probably talk about that for hours, because there were so many things you said in there, Phyllis, and we're going to have to keep coming back to so many of them. I don't care what profession the people are listening to that are listening to our podcast, because we have people from every profession, and we have people that are just here to learn about their family or themselves. Everything you said was applicable across the board. I don't know how many other industries I've heard them say, well, we're bringing you this technology so that you can spend more time with the client. And then the technology doesn't work, or the technology brings them a challenge, or they're just somewhere that doesn't have internet at that moment. So they're in a challenge of, well, technology is actually being counterproductive right now. I should just drop all that stuff. So hearing some of those things that you're saying, talking about burnout in there, talking about all of this stuff, you clearly have a grasp on it. Talking about making sure we know ourselves and being emotionally aware. I mean,
Chad, you know what I heard in there? I heard that like we as an industry, the healthcare industry, that people come into that industry with this passion to help other people. We talked to the doctor recently, Chad. He said that's why you got this passion to help other people, and then they just strip all the passion about that out of the actual job, right? And all of a sudden, 5 years later, some people 20 years later, you look up and you're like, this isn't what I signed up for, right? I'm burned out. Like in that, if you showed up or you started a career for a certain reason and they strip that out of it, and we can't find some way to allow them to have it back, and that would be really, really hard.
Yeah, I got to imagine, Bob, there's plenty of professions like that. Healthcare, obviously, they go in there to help people. How about someone, I mean, I don't know, I'm not speaking from experience, but someone like a vet, they want to get into it because they want to help animals. And then it becomes so, through insurances or other things that they're dealing with, and firefighters and police, and it all becomes so political with all the stuff that goes on. So where does it, let's talk about that right there, Phyllis. And why is emotional intelligence development so important to help us prevent burnout from happening when possible?
So really, the emotional intelligence is something that can't come from the outside. It must come from within. And that is really what I believe resilience is all about. And, resilience to me is the antidote to burnout. So I define resilience as optimal coping. Optimal coping.
Okay.
So that you're not just, resilience to me is not just being able to take a punch. Okay. It's to be able to navigate some really choppy waters, and along the way learn something that you can then put into your character, so that the next time you're going to be navigating rapids, you can do it that much better. So that resilience is kind of like, it gains momentum. You meet one challenge, and if you navigate it correctly, you lean into that and you learn the lesson from where you are. I kind of call them boot camp moments. So these are boot camp moments where you see where you're strong facing this particular challenge, but then you also notice where you need to do a little work. And if you have the intestinal fortitude and the courage to lean in, not to just what you're doing well, but to really lean in and say, I need to do some work here. That is the building blocks of resilience, because the next time you meet a similar challenge or even a different challenge, you're going to have that much more to be able to navigate with.
Got it. Okay. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. These boot camp moments. I like the terms that you're using. Optimal coping, and we're building up almost an endurance for it. We're building up a strength for it, as you're saying. So as we hit the next wall and we hit the next wall, we've got more speed each time. We're able to take the experiences from the past with us into the future.
Now, as far as that helps with, preventing or at least lowering the risk of caregiver burnout. Okay.
Or anybody's burnout, right?
Correct. But then how does that then help you to, navigate your way through the world? Because one part of emotional intelligence has to do with yourself. And then the second part of emotional intelligence is how you interact with the world. So I believe that the point of these boot camp moments is not for you to toughen up. It's for you to tool up. So that these boot camp moments are a time for you to identify with your humanity, with the fact that you're not perfect, with the fact that everybody goes down on one knee every now and then, but needs to get back up. It creates a tenderness within you, if it's, I believe, navigated correctly, that makes you more open to seeing the collective human experience, that you are not just one person, but you're one person among many who are all trying to navigate being an adult in this world. And in that moment, you find compassion and empathy, so that through struggling through your path of life and leaning into your challenges and tooling up and not toughening up, when you see someone else, perhaps a subordinate, a colleague, a patient, your family, struggling with something similar, you can kind of approach them from an empathetic, authentic way to say, I know the cave you're in, but guess what? I know where the door is. Let me help you.
That's awesome. I'm loving what you're saying. And especially adding family at the end of this is everybody in any situation. So for those of you who are listening to this, who haven't had a chance to check out our series or don't know emotional intelligence other than you've heard the term, there are pieces to emotional intelligence that are broken down. As you mentioned, some are internal and some are how we deal with the world. The first part of emotional intelligence is listed as self-awareness.
Yes.
Right? Are we self-aware?
That's the gateway competency. You got to go through that one first.
Second part is self-regulate, right? Can we control ourselves and stuff? I was never good at this. My dad always taught me that my mouth was much quicker than my head as I would shoot off my mouth for certain situations, right? Then if we can be self-aware and if we can regulate ourselves, then we get to start to go into the motivation, which is of us and for that outside interaction with people. And then the last two, you just mentioned empathy being one of the traits of emotional intelligence. And then the last one, social skills. And do we have it? Just for everybody who's out there who's going, okay, I've heard this emotional intelligence, but what are the pieces of it? Those are the pieces. So Phyllis, people say that people can't change, right? We say we hit a certain point and we just don't change anymore. A leopard can't change its spots, the old saying that goes with that. Can I, even at my age and my stubbornness and my routines, can I grow emotionally intelligent still? Or is it like my IQ where it hits a plateau and says, this is kind of your IQ?
That happened a long time ago, Chad. My
IQ or my EQ?
No, your IQ. I'm assuming she's going to say this is something that could be developed, your EQ, but your IQ, you're in trouble there, my friend.
I was going to say, when he mentioned his IQ, he left himself wide open for you to comment.
Well, Phyllis, I don't miss any. I slid right in there.
Bob's really good at taking those shots at me, Phyllis. Don't worry about it.
So to your point, your intellectual quotient, your IQ, is something that is somewhat fixed. Okay, and remember, it's not how smart you are. Your intellectual quotient measures aptitude. It measures potential, and that type. So that you can. It's not a fixed number as such. But your emotional intelligence is something that you can grow each and every day, and it's really a personal choice. So where your intellectual quotient, if you want to get the most out of it, then you have to try to apply yourself and really learn how you learn academic knowledge and how you retain it and how you apply it. With your emotional intelligence, it's a journey inward, and you really have to find the desire first to say, I can do better. And then you have to find the courage to face what you're going to face. Because many of my coaching clients will tell me that self-awareness, which is the gateway competency, can be like chewing on glass, which is not the greatest advertisement for developing emotional intelligence, but it is honest. And I would want to be honest with your listeners. Developing your emotional intelligence is totally possible. This is a pathway to you being more capable and competent and comfortable in your own skin. It is a huge investment of energy, time, and a little bit of pain sprinkled all over. But the return on that investment of being that much more comfortable in your own skin and really feeling as though you can navigate the world and appropriately respond to, in a healthy, capable manner, to whatever rolls up on your doorstep. I mean, the return on that investment is huge.
I assume that, and this isn't a question, sometimes we give you some of the questions and then Chad says sometimes they just let me fire them, Phyllis. So, you work with a lot of healthcare professionals and different organizations. And so I'm assuming that this isn't like, it's not like, hey, here's 3 tips of how you can make, these are developed classes and people are really committing to, but are there any, like, let's just say somebody out there was like, you know what, I want to be a little bit more self-aware. What would be a first step there to having just a little bit increased self-awareness, if self-awareness is in fact the gateway to better emotional intelligence?
So when people usually make a decision to do that, Bob, it's usually because they've received some sort of feedback. All right. So somebody may along the line say, well, that didn't go so great, or, geez, did you hear yourself? Did you really want to come across like that? Or
I hear these messages every day. One of these days, I guess I'm going to wake up to this. All right,
or you don't necessarily have to hear that feedback. You come out of a meeting or something or a close encounter with somebody and you think it yourself. So, the first thing is to acknowledge that there is a gap between how I am currently responding to my emotions and responding to things that are triggering me, and that I can narrow that gap if I lean in. So the first thing is to acknowledge you can do better, to acknowledge that you can learn. All right. And there really is, if you truly want to develop your emotional intelligence, just focus on your self-awareness and your self-management. You really need to understand what emotions trigger me, what conditions trigger me. So I am a type A redhead emergency department nurse from New York City. You don't want to see me tired. Trust me.
I know you very well in my family.
So if I'm tired and then I get angry or something triggers me, my vulnerability goes down. So my risk of getting upset, it goes higher. So, there's something very simple, almost like a no-brainer, that I need to sleep more or rest more. But because I'm a professional caregiver, I think I can exist on 3 hours sleep. So that piece then, when you start to know what things trigger you, is that you have to then make a decision. Well, then I have to change something, because it's not just making a list of here's what triggers me. Here are the emotions that bother me. Here's where I'm going to get irritable. You then have to go to the self-management piece and say, then what am I going to do to limit the risk of being triggered?
Such a great answer.
So get more sleep, not be hangry. Okay. Learn some 7-11 breathing. Okay. Breathing in for 7 seconds, exhaling for 11. That sounds easy, but it's not, because we're shallow breathers. So trying to breathe in for a count of 7 and exhaling for a count of 11 actually brings down your metabolic rate, makes you more comfortable in your own skin, and you're less likely then to say or do something that you're going to regret. So there are various techniques you can use, but you have to make a concerted effort to do them. It's not just taking the class, it's doing the work.
Phyllis, are you watching?
Bob, are you doing it too?
I can see you doing it, Chad. And I was doing it, absolutely. Counting to 7. I'm half listening to Phyllis. I'm half watching you breathe in for 7 and out for 11, and then I'm doing it myself. So
I was waiting for him to yawn.
I actually feel a little bit.
Not going to happen. I'm very calm when it actually comes to that. I actually have a very low resting heart rate. So
I'm a shallow breather. Like that. That takes me almost to the edge of my inhale capacity, right? I mean, not quite, but
that's a great tip though for everybody listening. Mm-hmm. We've all heard the count to 10. Forget the count to 10, because when you're angry, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. Right? You just get to 10.
It's usually 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Boom. That's how people count down from 10. They don't count to 10. But doing the 7-11 breathing, for an old hippie like myself, when we tell you to get centered, the vagus nerve in your body runs through the center of you. And if you stimulate that vagus nerve, then you can stimulate something called your parasympathetic nervous system that slows everything down. And that's all that is. 7-11 breathing, just 3 nice sets of 7-11 breathing, and you can get a better handle on yourself in that moment. It's great to do before a meeting, or it's great to do after a close encounter so you don't take it to the next meeting. It's a real handy thing.
Some of these, that's a lot, emotional intelligence. We're talking about our brain and our thoughts and our feelings. But you're also given, and I'm going to maybe butcher this, it's like the physiological side of it, right? It's like, when I breathe, it actually slows down my nervous system and things change in my body physiologically. It's not just my brain, but wow.
Right. Bob, do you remember when Chad said that his father used to say his mouth works faster than his brain?
Yeah.
Guess what? It does. Physiologically, it does.
Right.
So that we get an impulse, a thought, something triggers us in the back of our brain. It goes through our emotional center in our brain, and it doesn't get to the thinking portion of our brain until after it passes through the emotions, which is why it's so hard sometimes to catch ourselves, and which is why self-management and self-awareness is work.
Oh, Phyllis, why weren't you around so much earlier in my life so I could have said to my dad, see, it's true. It's not me. It's just a thing.
But you can do the work so that you can short circuit that emotional impulse and say, I can feel myself. And again, if you're doing this 7-11 breathing, you become aware of the fact that your hands just got into fists, or you're starting to breathe a little more rapidly, not necessarily deeply, and that your neck veins are, as things are tightening. And then you think to yourself, now I just need to put a pause or a buffer, a moment, if you will, between what I'm feeling and what I say or do next. And that's the technique that needs to be learned in order to be successful at increasing your emotional intelligence and being that much more comfortable in your skin.
All right. So, Phyllis, Bob asked you for a tip for everybody, and we gave them the 7-11 breathing. That's fantastic. And I know you're going to tell me you're not an expert at it, because we all want it. I mean, you are, but you're going to say, how do you personally, you're beyond the 7-11 breathing. That's something that's probably natural to you to take. How is someone who's mastered or has an incredible handle, at least on emotional intelligence, still continue to improve and go to the next level?
For me, it's practicing mindfulness.
Practicing mindfulness.
It is.
Talk to us a little bit about that. We talk about that on our 15-point plan podcast. We have a whole thing and we talk about mindfulness, but talk to us about mindfulness from you.
The ability to be mindful is the ability to be in your body from the neck down. So that when, the whole idea of how you get revved up is that our brain goes into these ruminating loops of thought. Okay. And I can't believe she did that. She did that. She did it before. She told me she wouldn't do it. And the next thing you know, you're all bent out of shape and you're looking for blood from somebody, right? So, the way to be able to do that is to come out of your ending loop of thought. You can't stop thinking, but you can refocus your attention on a physiological process. That's why we usually ask you to do breathing. So that if you try to just focus on, breathing in, feel your diaphragm come down, feel your chest expand, feel use your senses to understand if you're smelling something as you inhale. Notice the difference between the temperature of what you're inhaling and your body temperature when you exhale. In other words, you're using mindfulness to distract yourself, refocus your attention on something that is a little bit more calming, so that you can then short circuit that ruminating thought that's triggering you into something you don't want to do. It also, Pema Chodron, who's one of the really wonderful American Buddhist nuns, says that mindfulness or meditation is the ability to make the space between each thought longer so that you can rest in that space. And it's just resting your mind. Now, you don't have to be, it's like, Levy's and being Jewish and Levy's rye bread. You don't have to be Jewish to enjoy Levy's rye bread. You don't have to be Buddhist to do meditation and mindfulness, right? You can garden. You can watch mindless TV. You can play with your grandchildren. You can shoot hoops. You can swim. A lot of people run. But the whole idea is to be in your body and not in your head. And that really is it. Now, one of the quickest ways to do that, I believe, and that I practice daily, is gratitude. So, being able to get up and start your day with something that is, you have to be present to notice something in order to be grateful for it, or you're just kind of miss it, right? So like if you get up in the morning, I used to get up in the morning and watch the news right away. And trust me, CNN is no way to start the day. So, I now get up in the morning and I stumble into the kitchen and I make the coffee and I sit and I look out a window and I enjoy my coffee. And I'm like, wow, this is really good coffee. And it looks like it's going to be a nice day. And it just sets the tone differently. And I feel a little bit like more of a peaceful entry into the day. And then you notice things like you get into the car and your family actually left gas in the car so you can get to work without having to go buy gas. You notice whether you have traffic or you don't. You got a parking spot and it's not in outer Mongolia, so you can actually get to work, looking civil.
Phyllis, can I stop you for a second?
Sure.
I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, you tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like when you go sit down at that table and you look outside, if it was going to rain today, I feel like you'd say, man, that rain's we need that rain. That's going to make the grass grow.
But that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah. I might say something like, I really love the smell of the air.
I was thinking that.
After it rains, And it's not that I'm playing Pollyanna. It's that I am really fighting my tendency, my neurobiological tendency to see the negative.
Is that something we all have? That neurobiological tendency means
that's right.
Okay.
That's right. That's part of our survival, fight and flight. We go negative so we can survive.
Okay.
So we have to kind of acknowledge that because it's never going to go away. We acknowledge that, and then we say, yeah, but the rain is really lovely. And look, the spring is, maybe we're actually going to have flowers in May. And, it's the amazing thing is the more you find to be grateful, the more things to be grateful for show up. So when I teach nurse leaders or any executives for that matter, when they're doing rounding with their staff, put a little bit more of a positive spin on your inquiry. So usually the conventional thing is you round, you're the nurse manager, the director, you go up to your staff. And what do you usually say? How's it going? Wrong. Because all you're going to hear is what went wrong, right? You're going to hear a litany of things that are going to be complaints.
Tell me something good.
Tell me something good.
Right. As opposed to walking up to your staff and saying, tell me one thing that's working today. Okay? Tell me one more thing that's working today. And then because as leaders who are emotionally intelligent, we know enough that we need to be of service to our staff, that there really is no leadership unless we are service leaders. The next question you ask your staff would be, what can I do to help you today? How can I be of service for you right in this moment? Good. You want to make a connection with your staff. You want to role model emotional intelligence. You want to create a culture that is not about the individual, but about the group. That's the way to do it.
Well, that's, and Bob was saying there, tell me something good. Friend to the podcast and mentor of mine, Clint Swindoll, it was his lesson for years, still is his lesson. He wrote a book about it and on engaged leadership and everything. So it's a powerful one for us. We definitely don't walk around asking people.
Chad, isn't it funny how we've been able to, I don't know what this is going to end up, be our 120th episode. There's so many threads from so many awesome people like Phyllis that they all tie together, right? These secrets of leadership and having lives that we want to wake up to every morning and emotional intelligence. There's so many just similar concepts.
Yeah. If people are listening, they're noticing a trend in all of our episodes and they're noticing the messages that it doesn't matter. And we're not sitting here going, oh, we got to find someone who says this. Phyllis was brought to my attention and connected and said, hey, Phyllis would love to come on your podcast. And we said, we'd love to have Phyllis. And we didn't know you were going to say that. We're just finding it out as we go. But Phyllis, you're talking about how you lead your team. You're talking about modeling it for your team. Bob, you've got 3 boys, but you got the 2 who are living with you who are now currently where in age?
3 and 4.
Okay. So now 3 and 4 is young, Phyllis. We got that young age, but talk to our audience members, talk to Bob, talk to our audience members. Forget my team at work. How about my team at home? How does Bob lead his boys so that they grow up to be much more emotionally intelligent than Bob will ever be because they're going to have so many more years of awareness about it?
It's a low bar for them to cross over, by the way. But but Phyllis said I can still continue to push my boundaries, right?
Yeah. How do our audience members work with their families and their children on creating more emotional intelligence around the house?
It's going to have to start with the parents first. Sorry, Bob. Okay. I know you would like to jumpstart to the boys, but that's kind of like trying to skip the personal competencies of self-awareness and self-management and go right to the social competencies. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work like that. So the more work you do for yourself, what you are going to find is that you have far more empathy for the struggle of a 4-year-old with his 3-year-old brother, right? You're going to have that much more patience. You're going to have that much more reserve and resilience. You're going to see the humor. And you're going to start, even as annoying as some of those moments can be, you can start cherishing those moments, knowing that this piece of your parenting and that portion of their life is very short-lived and they grow too fast. So, and then there's a piece of role modeling, all right? And then I don't want to say insisting, but holding the bar high enough that you know that the boys can actually speak in a civil manner to one another. And I think that's probably the important piece, because at this age, there's a lot of, you touch my stuff, you broke my stuff, I want that chair. They're fighting, right? So that, don't be afraid to use adult words like, I have expectations that you are going to speak well to one another. I have an expectation that you're not going to hit anyone. And I think, when you say that and you create a bar for your children or even for your staff as a leader, okay, I have an expectation that we're going to conduct, business in a civil manner, then it's important for children to know what's expected of them. They're fragile, they're pliable, and they're willing and smart beyond. You and I were never this smart.
Yeah.
And Chad was never this smart.
Phyllis, you're welcome on the podcast anytime.
Now Phyllis is taking shots at me.
I love her.
So, but if you speak to your children as if they are capable of understanding what you're saying, and you do the work of holding them accountable to some very, reasonable expectations, then you're going to give them that fortitude that this is not just what dad is going to expect of them. It's more than likely what the world is going to expect of them as well. When they go to school, there is an expectation that they pay attention and do the work and conduct themselves in a civil manner. When they go to work, there is going to be that great expectation as well. When they go in, they develop their own relationships with friends and perhaps loved ones. It's going to be easier to know what to do because it's been taught to them and role modeled to them early.
And it's never too late. Bob's boys are young. We're talking to Bob specifically. Yet, anybody who's got teenagers, my daughter's 20 now. We can still be role modeling this and helping them get one step ahead of where we ever were at that age.
That's true, and as your children do grow, it's important to say, or at least important to open yourself up to be vulnerable. Even they may face something that you never saw coming or was never on. You don't have any skill set for this, and you can simply then, because you are emotionally intelligent, you can still say, I have no idea what you're going through with this challenge, but I have faced devastating challenges or extraordinary challenges in my life. I can't replicate what you're feeling, but I am here and I am open to going through this with you.
And that's because we've been self-aware of what's happened to us.
That's right.
And we're showing empathy now on those
that's
skills.
That's correct. So, a lot of times, if I'm, working with families in the emergency department, and God forbid we've lost a child. I, thank you, have never lost a child. Okay. But I have had sudden catastrophic loss in my life. So if I can go there, then I can be that much more authentic and relatable. And as you're talking to your children, your sons, as they grow older, the more you let them know, or you're able to convey, I know what it's like not to get picked for the team. I know what it's like, for this. I know what it's like for that. And you can talk to me about it. And it's really the compassion and empathy really translates into the willing to truly listen, not listen to respond and come off with, I've got the answer, but really listen to feel the energy of what that person is sharing, so that you then become that much more authentic. And even if you say to somebody, I don't have an answer for this, but you're not going to go through it alone, it's just as touching and meaningful.
Man, hey, Phyllis, I listen, this, like, I hope none of our other guests we've had in the past are listening to this particular episode. This is probably my favorite interview that we've done on the Would Make It podcast.
Oh, Bob, thank you.
And look, we've interviewed like 3 other people this week. Chad, tell her, I didn't say that to any of them, right?
No,
like,
yeah.
this is really...
I'm actually going to have Dave cut this piece and send it to everybody else we've interviewed just to
make them up their game. They need to up their game. Phyllis brought it today. I mean, she did.
Phyllis, let's get to this. Now, we've got a few things we want to wrap up with. You have a book.
I do.
And I want to give you a chance, mention the book, how people can get their hands on the book. We're going to put it in the show notes. We're going to put it in our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/WinMakeGive. When this episode goes live, we will be posting the links to it. And they'll be in the show notes for anybody that's just listening and not near Facebook right now. But talk a little bit about the book.
Well, the title of the book is Bringing Shadow Behavior into the Light of Day. Okay. And it really, the subtitle of it is Understanding and Effectively Managing Bullying and Incivility in Healthcare. So we talked a little bit before about, creating a healthy work environment and lowering the risk of burnout. There are many pillars to creating a healthy work environment, such as communication and collaboration and authentic leadership. But to me, I think a lot of, when I read Harvard Business Review or any of the other authorities on healthy work environments, they're not really talking about effectively addressing disruptive behavior. And unfortunately, bullying and incivility lives, and it lives in healthcare. So my book is an easy, quick read. It's 90-odd pages. It is not a book discussing bullying and incivility. It's a book to really guide you into how to address it. First, effectively assess whether you're dealing with someone who's a bully or chronically uncivil, and then what to do next. And most importantly, how to effectively partner with administration and human resources so that you can address the problem without putting your own career in jeopardy.
Wow. And how can they get it? I mean, again, we'll post the links in our Facebook group. They're in the show notes for anybody, but for those just listening right now, how could they get a copy?
So the hard copy is featured on my website, which is MFW Consultants, Michael Frank William, mfwconsultants.com. You would go to the store tab and you would just follow the links and you can order the hard copy of the book. The Kindle version is on Amazon. And if you Google Phyllis Quinlan, it will come right up.
So you just gave us your website. How else can our audience who are sitting there the same way as Bob going, this has been amazing. I need more from this lady. I got to reach out to her myself.
Does she do one-on-one? Does she do one-on-ones? Like
for you, Bob, yes, we're going to set that up. She does. Absolutely. She told you to coach for 20 years when it comes to a lot of this stuff. How do people connect with you after the episode if they want?
They go to my website, and I really invite everybody to go to mfwconsultants.com. There are a lot of links to my social media.
Which all right.
So I am on Twitter. I am on Instagram. You can get a daily dose of resilience, Bob. You need to follow me on Instagram so you can get your daily dose of resilience in the morning. Okay.
He's doing it right now. He stopped listening. He's searching you on Instagram.
Yeah, I'm doing it. I'm going.
And let's see, Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, LinkedIn. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. And we can start a conversation there. But all those icons are on the mfwconsultants.com face page. And that's an easy way just to connect with me. And of course, you can email me. And if you're looking to develop a coaching relationship, Bob, then that's the way to get a hold of me and we can follow up.
All right. And again, folks, all in our show notes, and we're going to put it into our Facebook page, facebook.com/group/WinMakeGive if you're not already a member there. Now, Phyllis, to wrap this up as a huge thank you to you, this year we've really made a commitment to live up to the give of Win, Make, Give. And what we're doing is for the first 30 days, the number of listens that this episode can get. So everybody out there, share it with everybody, because the more listens we get, the more we're going to donate. And we want you to choose who we're going to make the donation to based on the listens from this episode. So who is it that we're going to be able to make a donation to?
It's going to be the Cohen Children's Medical Center in New Hyde Park, New York, specifically the Holistic Nursing Program. This is a group of healthcare practitioners who are offering energetic healing and supportive listening, not just to the staff, but they're also offering Reiki and massage to the parents, to the patients, and of course the staff. They are an incredible group. A big shout out to them, and anything we can do to support that program would be truly appreciated. It's the Cohen Children's Medical Center in New Hyde Park, New York, specifically their holistic nursing program.
All right. And Phyllis, I'll tell you that if I go back to my grandparents, Cohen's in New York. So somehow I'm probably connected to someone who's probably connected to someone who started all that somehow. Because, I mean, there aren't any Cohens in New York, are there? No, it's not a common name in the area at all. So, Phyllis, I really want to thank you for taking the time and joining us today and really finally helping me put Bob in his place. I'll take the shots you want to bring to me as long as he remembers the challenges that's ahead of all of us. Folks, we hope you are subscribed so that you don't miss when the next episode drops and you would have missed an episode just like this. We want to make sure that you're there for us. And to take it back to what Phyllis said to us about emotional intelligence, you have to start with the desire to do better, then have the courage to do better. And then on behalf of the Win, Make, Give team, we want you to then go out and do good.